If you're new in town or just new to this whole podcast thing, you're tuning in to Law by Night, the podcast that discusses all things vampiric with no fear of breaching the Masquerade. In this episode, we begin to unravel the mysteries behind the origins, motives and cultures of the 5 fallen factions in the world of darkness. This episode will focus on the Cryptic Faction. I'm surprised you came back, little lamb. Without diving into a lot of pointless war efforts, there is not much to talk about. It's almost like you're addicted to me or something, that you need me. Oh, that's right, there's still the factions, the 5 philosophies and ideals which the fallen dedicate their existence in these gloomy times. Well, as we ended the previous set of conversations with my house, the Slayers, I think we should start with my faction, the Cryptics. For a very simple answer, the Cryptics spend their time unravelling and examining the creations of God to see if there are any answers for their own advantage, whilst others try to determine how powerful God is. Some aim to investigate and understand their past failures and regain their lost power. Others seek knowledge and challenge God, either directly or indirectly. Meanwhile, there are also those who pursue information about existence simply because it exists. As for me, I ponder what lies beyond the veil, but we all do so to access information. Anything and everything could hold vital clues. To anyone and everyone within and outside the faction, our goals are nebulous, which are both a huge strength and our greatest weakness. The lack of assumptions makes it easier for us to avoid the willful thinking of the Luciferians and the Faustians. Their viewpoints are somewhat clouded by their beliefs, whereas the Cryptics tend to see things as they are. Take Lucifer himself, who was last spotted in Los Angeles in America. The Luciferians see it as a sign the Morning Star is fighting the good fight in need of an army still. The Faustians saw it as a propaganda trick of the Luciferians, and for the Cryptics, well, it just means Lucifer is still around. He's no better than the rest of us now. The downside to our lack of motive, or one true ideology if you want to get spiritual about it, brings a lack of organisation, or doesn't bring, if you get what I mean. Too many of our number are starry-eyed demons that don't belong in the reconcilers, too individualistic, too unreliable for the ravenous of some of our ilk, or total batshit, and too mad for the Faustians. We have a variety of spades, but it comes at a volatile cost. We are not totally disorganised, however. Aramel, the one who foresaw the Age of Wrath, leads as one of the strident and influential Cryptics, forever asking questions, whilst it is Giptonel who encourages the faction to be on fairly good terms with the other factions and ally with them in order to observe, understand and learn from them. Aramel is not enthusiastic about taking on the role and would prefer to focus on his own studies rather than becoming the centre of a group with failed beliefs. However, the true driving force behind the Cryptics is the Anunnaki Giptonel, who works to maintain both the Cryptics and his own house by remaining impartial and willing to share his expertise with anyone who is remotely interested. We do have something to bind us beyond our personal work to, well, work on. Name an airport in the US and we're there. Heathrow in London is ours too, similar to other airports in Tokyo, Beijing, Rio de Janeiro. Why airports? Well, it's simple, little lamb. Airports provide mobility, which allows tsunamis of information to flood through every single day. Our strongholds preserve and monitor this, as well as keep track of the movement of the fallen. We hope to create an inventory of every fallen who walks the earth, especially with the existence of the earthbound making things particularly difficult for us. We monitor these two things in 2 different books. For the Fallen, we have the Book of Rebels, the Skalitzamonicon, and the Crucianomicon, which is the Book of the Tormented, for the Earthbound. I ain't going to give you those names again, so you're just going to get their full titles, unless I change my mind partway through. Anyway, these aren't big ancient books, and no, they aren't encrypted word files either. The way the faction deals with them is by signing 14 Fallen, which works out to be 2 from each house, memorizing the whole lot, collectively known as the Library or librarians. They are the very heart of the Cryptic Faction, which identities are concealed except for the second demons, one from each house, collectively known as the Quisitori. Each one memorized the names of the 4 librarians, 2 who are mentioned in the, here we go again, the Selexicomicon, whatever, the 2 who memorized the Crucianomicon. It's very complicated, yes, as are their names, but it's all very fitting for a faction of cryptics. As for the books themselves, the Book of the Rebels, every cryptic is encouraged to report everything they know about every fallen angel to the Central Committee. There are mortal names, house information, original roles of the Holy Host, ranks in the Infernal Host, activities in the war, the list goes on. Whilst I haven't personally seen it, it's said to have information about 70% of the Fallen there, though that was about 20 years ago, so that number might be higher now, but it could also be low as there are more different ratios and shit now. Anyway, however, the more recent and useful data, such as the names and location of current human hosts, faction identification, and current plans are less common, which occupy some 15% of the last time I checked. Most of those who registered that info are cryptics themselves. Rarer still are true names. Supposedly, only 2 are in there. No, it's not one of mine. Fuck off. Now, for the Book of the Tormented, that has about 11 earthbound demons recorded there, 6 of which include their celestial name. Each entry has pages and pages of speculation about the history, the activities of the entity in question, and so on. You could also find a list of thralls, potential against and suspected goals. Those who have their celestial name recorded usually have their house identification, position, rank, and history in the Age of Wrath. In case you were curious, we don't have any of their true names. Amongst the Cryptic Faction, you will find plenty of malefactors, as it is the natural fit for their methodical ways. Slayers ask similar questions to the malefactors, but with a more personal drive. Many feel the tragic deaths made to humanity that were brought upon them, and they seek the answers for their guilt and sorrow. We don't like the thoughtless flaying and nihilism of the Raveners. Their fury achieves nothing. The Reconcilers are the inverse and too idealistic, but at least they ask questions. Both of these factions suffer from the problems of being just bloody miserable, moping about all the time. Their degradations are filled with chasms of illogical voids, and yet it is everyone else that needs pity. Laughable, really, but the ones that really get under our noses are the Luciferians and the Faustians, as I touched upon before. They are blindingly follow the ideologies of Cain before, the ones that ultimately failed them and the rest of us. They never stop to ask what their goals should be. Truth is, no one really has a right answer, and even if we did, I doubt the Fallen would act upon it. Our aeons of suffering in the underworld gave us a lot of thinking time to take a step back and reconsider our initial assumptions, and we know what's wrong but not what is right. But let me give you some hard facts for you, little lamb. Facts that only a cryptic could provide for you, okay? God's perspective is either omniscient or so removed and all-pervasive as to be nearly omniscient, especially when compared to angels and humans. If Aramel saw the revolt coming, so did God, long before the angel did. God is either perfect or close enough to make no odds, which means we angels are either perfect or close enough to perfection that reality could stand, which would imply that the revolution was not an imperfection. How do I know? Well, Lucifer was the first among the angels and closest to God in power and position, meaning he is closer to God's ideal than any other, which would suggest the rebellion was part of God's plan, rather than a deviation from it. It would also mean that God would know about our escape from the abyss, to which I ask you, what is God's new plan for his unwitting servants, and what is the role and indeed the fate of Lucifer today? If we are God's pawns, is there truly a way to escape fate, or even fucking trying? And now you understand the daily struggles of a fallen within the Cryptic Faction. To be kept updated, follow the Law by Night VTM Twitter and Instagram pages to find out when we upload each episode. You can also find out by subscribing to the YouTube channel and clicking on the little bell, as you'll be immediately notified when the latest episode is live. Until next time, farewell.